Winner, with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Jubry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
But if anyone here is banking with Barclays, then I suggest you stick your head in a bucket of fuel and set fire to it.
Should the BBC's Chris Packham not face serious consequences for those comments? Well... People who tweeted nasty things about the riots have been sent to prison, but people with more than 100 convictions, they avoid jail. Is this two-tier justice? Also, footballers will yet again take the knee this season. Just get up, lads, and...
People behind me haven't had a pay rise for 5 years, half a decade. Regardless of what you earn, you feel that you have a right to demand a pay rise.
Are Labour lying to us about the state of the economy? And... I reveal Harry and Meghan's absolutely ridiculous plans for their Colombia trip. On my panel tonight, it is journalist and columnist Harriet Sargent. We've got Tory peer Lord Bailey and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Oh yes, and what's going on here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is Labour lying about coming for your money? Next.
Patrick, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories, and we start this news bulletin with some breaking news that a large fire has broken out in an apartment block here in London's Paddington alongside the canal. We will try to bring you some photos as soon as we get them. Large plumes of smoke can be seen bellowing from a cracked window and debris also falling onto the street below. We have heard bystanders shouting and urging others who could potentially still be inside to get out if they can. Hundreds of people have been gathering outside. At least 4 fire crews are now on the scene, and we will bring you more on that as we get it. In other news, Hollywood actor Matthew Perry's assistant and 2 doctors are among 5 people who've been charged after the Friends star died from an accidental ketamine overdose last October. A US attorney said the investigation uncovered a broad underground criminal network responsible for distributing a large quantity of ketamine to Perry and to others. The 54-year-old was found unresponsive in the pool at his residence in Los Angeles. A medical examiner said Perry had been receiving ketamine infusion for therapy for depression and anxiety, with his last known treatment 1.5 weeks prior to his death. Well, US Attorney for the Central District of California, Martin Estrada, spoke during a press conference this evening.
As I mentioned, the defendants in this case knew what they were doing was wrong. When they'd refer to the ketamine, they used coded language. They'd refer to it using terms such as, quote, Dr. Pepper, or quote, bots, or quote, cans. Also, defendants Placencia and Chavez, as medical doctors, knew full well this was not the proper way to administer ketamine, and they even talked about that in their exchanges.
In other news, the proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the government. But Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson earlier said there are still inequalities in the education system. Sweden has confirmed it's recorded its first case of a contagious new variant of monkeypox, a day after the World Health Organization declared it a global health emergency. The strain emerged in the Democratic Republic of Congo with more than 17,000 cases and 571 deaths in Africa this year, according to the WHO, which exceeds last year's total. Scientists from the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention report 96% of all cases and deaths have been in DR Congo. The UK Health Security Agency says there are currently no cases of the virus here in the UK, and its deputy director claims that that risk is currently considered low. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been welcomed to Colombia as they begin their 4th-day tour of the South American nation. Harry and Meghan were met in the capital, Bogotá, by Colombia's Vice President, Francia Marquez, and her husband. They spent around half an hour at the Vice President's residence, where they exchanged welcome gifts and were offered tea, coffee, and traditional Colombian cheese bread. It is understood they'll focus on the impact of the digital world on young people, the military community, and female empowerment. The Duke and Duchess will also explore Colombia's history and culture. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. Are Labour lying to you about the state of the economy? Now, before the election, it was all about this, wasn't it?
We will not raise tax on working people. No tax rises for income tax, for national insurance, for VAT. We will not raise income tax. We will not raise national insurance. We will not raise VAT.
Labour has no plans to increase taxes on working people.
Well, in an article in the Financial Times before the election, Chancellor Rachel Reeves said this: "We've got the OBR now. We know things are in pretty bad state. You don't need to win an election to find that out." All right, well, now Labour have won. We're hearing this.
We have inherited a projected overspend of £22 billion. A £22 billion hole in the public finances now. Not in the future, but now. £22 billion of spending this year that was covered up by the party opposite.
Let's have a little look at this black hole, shall we? Labour have just awarded a 15% pay rise to train drivers. Their union in the main is ASLEF. That's led by Mick Whelan. He sits on Labour's National Executive Committee. That means that train drivers could now earn £70,000 a year, and it's set to cost the taxpayer roughly 100 million quid. Then there's the old 22% for junior doctors. They haven't actually ruled out striking again next year, by the way. Ed Miliband says Labour will pledge £11.6 billion in overseas climate aid. The Prime Minister announced an additional 84 million quid for foreign aid. The 5.5%, that's above inflation, by the way, public sector pay rises for teachers and some NHS staff is set to cost roughly 3 billion quid. That's according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies. They tried to claim the Tories were going to waste 10 billion quid on Rwanda. Well, each illegal migrant apparently cost us around £400,000 over the course of their lifetime. So by the time we've had 100,000 of them, we've hit 40 billion. Haven't we? And they've removed the deterrent, so how long is it before that happens? And guess what? They can't tell you where all of this money's actually coming from.
We are working through this process and we will make sure that this deal is fair, as we did where it comes to teachers as well, for example, where we had widespread industrial action that caused huge disruption. And again, that was another area where we've come in, we've taken action and we've sorted it out.
I ask you again, who will pay? Where will the money come from?
We will make sure that this is properly worked through and that we ensure that passengers get a fair deal as a part of this process.
Pensioners are already going to get hammered, aren't they? The winter fuel payments, they've all been scrapped. Reeves is trying to claim that she inherited the worst economy since the war. Well, it's just emerged that it's actually going gangbusters. It grew faster than any other G7 nation. Is there not a case for the idea that Rachel Reeves is going to put your taxes up to fill a black hole of her own making? Let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got journalist and author, the wonderful Harriet Sargent, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour Party advisor, the one and only Matthew Larser. Harriet, I'll start with you on this. Has Rachel Reeves created her own black hole here?
Well, she seems to be doing her best to create not just a black hole, but a huge crater. And I can't believe that only a few months since the general election, and for those of us who can remember the 1970s of soaring public pay, inflation, that we're just going, and rising taxes, that we're just going straight back into that era. I mean, I'm thinking I might have to dig out my old purple hot pants at this rate.
Well, that would be something, wouldn't it? Sean, I mean, are Labour now just openly lying here about the state of the finances and the economy?
Look, it's that age-old thing of claiming credit for things that other people done. All political parties do it. Labour are particularly good at it. So they talked the economy down when they were campaigning, and now they're beginning to talk it up when they begin to spend all of our money. But the real more important thing is when they talk about the black hole, the public must start to understand they have created this black hole and are continuing to grow it. These large pay rewards are then rewarding the people who sponsor the Labour Party, who are their members, fine, but everybody should be aware we will all be bearing that very huge cost.
You're shaking your head.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the junior doctors, ASLEF have a perfectly open relationship with the Labour Party, like unions representing millions of working people do, but the junior doctors have nothing to do with the Labour Party, the BMAs.
But I suppose it is a bit silly that you've just potentially given them a 22% pay rise and they're still going to go on strike next year.
Well, we don't know they're going to go on strike next year. I mean, that's just anybody can go on strike at any time if they follow the procedures. I mean, they're much less likely to go on strike next year after they've been given a sensible settlement, which was an awful lot less than they asked for.
You're about to make those procedures easier.
Yeah. And look, when a government...
No, not to go on strike. No, you still have to have a ballot.
When a government capitulates so easily, every union must be...
Exactly.
Let's be clear. Yeah. ASLEF and its leadership have done the best job for their members. That is their job, and they have done...
Sean, they've got less than they asked for.
But no, that's what you call bargaining.
Yes, exactly. Sean, 850... Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing. It let 22 days of strikes go... It let 22... It let weeks... It let months and months of strikes go ahead. It cost the railway 850 million quid and the economy over £1 billion quid. And your Secretary of State wouldn't even sit down and talk to them because he wanted to play politics.
Let's be very clear. Your party aimed to solve that because it's their members leading it. It's a political...
No, we solved it because we want to get the trains running, Sean. Which you didn't manage to do.
It's a political action by members of your party working in concert with their government. That's what it looks like.
And it's the government that people have just voted for 6 weeks ago.
I think the main point is there's no reason why these train drivers should be getting this huge right. I mean, they're earning £70,000 a year. And there is an argument for, say, putting up teachers' pay because it's very difficult to attract teachers into the profession. But
it's actually also very difficult to get train drivers.
When
there's a massive shortage of them, Harriet.
Exactly. But when train drivers
that's why you need to pay them properly.
Are advertised. In the north of England, for example, there are 700 people for every job advertised. They have no trouble because everybody, unlike the Labour government, is aware that working for the train companies is a great...
Harry, that's simply not true. If you actually live in the north of England and you sat there last year while one in 3 Transpennine trains were cancelled because his government didn't get enough train drivers, didn't employ enough train drivers.
So here's
the country was left in chaos.
So here's the argument then, Sean, that actually this is what it takes to make sure that our public services run smoothly without strike action, and the taxpayer just has to suck that up.
Well, that's exactly what Matthew seems to be saying, because what the Labour government has done, and again, if you run a union, you've done a great job, that is your job, but the government's job is to make sure that the public can afford these services, and we cannot sustainably afford the amount of pay increases. And what's more important, if your union wins so easily this time, they will be back because...
So you think public sector pay should fall behind private sector pay? Sorry, Harry.
Yeah, sorry. The other point is that there is nothing about productivity tied up with this.
Right.
I mean, it is just giving them money. They have the most unbelievable Spanish practices in the railway operations. They need 9 people to change 1 plug. They're not allowed... Oh, if you ask a railway worker to use an iPad, you have to pay them extra. There is all of this... None of this has been stopped at all, so that there's going to be no gain in productivity, and this is the taxpayer and the rail travellers are going to suffer for this.
We've got 11-point-something billion so that we can invest in clean energy abroad. Starmer just wheeled out straight away, I think the day after he scrapped the Rwanda scheme, 84 million quid in foreign aid. He's just tossing it.
I think that comes from the existing foreign aid budget.
Tossing it all around the world, Matthew, aren't we, at the moment?
No, I mean, look, the 80 million quid...
Pay for it. You see, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's us all who pay for it. We didn't vote for that.
Well, I think people did vote to have junior doctors in hospitals treating patients and to have the trains running so that we didn't impact the economy of the country. Both the junior doctors and the train drivers got less than they wanted for because you had sensible negotiations run by the government.
You keep saying less, right? You keep saying less, but 22%. 22% is huge.
Because they've fallen massively behind.
And what's really important is relative. Is it relative to our ability to afford it? Is it relative to any raise in their productivity? So when you say should public sector workers fall behind in pay compared to private sector, no. But what they should do is match their...
So you want every junior doctor going to Australia, do you, Sean? Do you want thousands going to Australia where they're offered twice the salary?
One thing I will say to that is I actually did interview Dr. Robert Lawrence.
I remember.
Yeah, the guy there. And I did put it to him that even if he got what he wanted, which at the time was 35%...
Yeah, exactly.
Would he still go? And he basically said probably yes, he's not going to rule it out. So the idea that this will...
Well, I think he's a bit of a joke.
Yeah, you're not alone in that. But, yeah, just getting back to the core of it, though... We can talk about the numbers all we like. We can talk about the numbers, but Rachel Reeves is lying when she says that she didn't know about this black hole.
No, she's not.
And that this black hole...
No, she's not. I mean, I spoke to a senior source in the Treasury just a few days ago, and he says that basically every time they open the cupboard, they find more craziness. It isn't true, Sean.
Sorry, Matthew.
They were using... Sean,
simply
no, it's not.
True. I tell you why. Rachel Reeves said it wasn't true, because she said before the election, we have the OBR. You don't have to win an election to find out the state.
The OBR doesn't audit the government, it does a projection of government spending.
What it does, the OBR knows what's going on. And do you know why they're called public spending? Because they're in the public arena.
Well, the entire asylum budget was being funded out of the reserves. That
might well be a fact, but there's no idea that it's a mystery. That simply isn't true.
Harriet, what people are going to absolutely 100% demand now, when we see these figures, so above inflation pay rises, people in the public sector like teachers, etc., the junior doctors that we've spoken about, the train drivers that we've spoken about, they are going to demand a vast improvement in the quality of our public services. Do you think we'll see that?
No, dream on. I don't think so, no. I think maybe there'll be a small improvement, but no, because there is no string. I mean, at least with Tony Blair, and I can't believe I'm standing up for Tony Blair here, but at least with Tony Blair, he had an overall policy for raising productivity. He had police, NHS, they were all given targets which they had to hit for more pay. And they were, they were quite upset. They really had to do it. But there's nothing like this now. I mean, it's just a free-for-all. You can go on claiming money to use an iPad. No one's going to be making you work harder or better for the public. So I don't think it's going to make any difference.
And when Matthew talks about do we want public sector workers not to be paid, of course we want them to be paid.
No, you said you don't.
But, no, you said that. The point being this, though, you have to have some respect for the bill payer, which is everybody else. And everybody else also finds it equally hard to live. So the idea that you can just jack up salaries and it has no effect simply isn't
Sean,
true.
these pay rises are lower than the average pay rises in the private
22%.
sector.
It's
over 3.5 years.
22%?
So yes.
I would also point out that I think the pensions are a lot lower in the private sector as well.
Exactly.
Well, the pensions differ between the train drivers and the NHS.
Where is this money coming from?
Well, the train driver settlement is less than 100 million, OK? So it's going to come from within the existing transport budget. The junior doctor settlement, which is absolutely necessary because there was a particular issue, not everybody, about how the junior doctors are falling behind other people within the system. That's going to be paid for within the health service. And in terms of transforming public services, let's just remind ourselves that Sean's government gave us inherited the longest waiting list in the NHS history after 14 years of failure. When the last Labour government left office, the waiting list were at their shortest. Not income tax, not national insurance.
But none of that explains what Labour are going to do.
Well, in 6 weeks, Sean, in 6 weeks we've got the junior doctors back to work, so they're treating patients.
Whatever the Tories did or didn't do, we are talking about what Labour's going to do.
Yes, and we've got the junior doctors treating patients, Sean.
I could tell you about to recover from the pandemic. I could tell you all those kind of things. What people are concerned about now is what are Labour going to do and what's it going to cost. Because it's only 100 million this year. How much will it be next year going forward? Because we, the public, will be carrying those bills.
Well, we've had a lively start to the show. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. Thank you very much. Coming up, as it emerges that career criminals with more than 100 previous convictions are being spared jail while people are being put behind bars for dodgy Facebook posts about the riots, has Labour got its priorities warped? Prisoner rehabilitation campaigner Winston Davis, he's live shortly, plus more brazen crime in lawless Britain. But up next, as it's revealed that Premier League footballers will take the knee before 6 games this season, should they just stop doing this gesture? All right, just get up, lads. England and Liverpool legend John Barnes goes head-to-head with GBNews star Nana Okoye, and that's next. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
One local cricket team was made up entirely of one family, the Jollens.
The Newmarket midweek seconds played Thurlow and Old Mill Greenian seconds, captained by, here we go, James Jolland. He played alongside family members Henry, Freddie, George, Jack, Archie, Ryan, Brandon and Daniel. Even if slightly controversial, one of the umpires was a Jolland to Stephen the umpire.
Yes, well, the Jolland family mostly live in Wickenbrook in Suffolk and have played for 4 years for Dullingham Village team before it merged with Newmarket. So that's the entire backstory. We're delighted to be joined now by Captain James Jolland and teammate and brother Nick Jolland. Really good to see you both this morning. This is incredible. How did you get the entire family involved in cricket?
Well, we started the club about 3 years ago, and it was more friends and family. But then it had this opportunity of this week to get everyone involved, because everyone was back and they all played cricket, various levels, and the youngest being 12, George. And we're all available, so we thought 1 week we'd do the whole team.
You booted the friends out for 1 week only?
Yeah, they were very good about it. They come and watched. They supported us.
How did the other team feel about having an umpire with related ties?
Well, the captain of the Thurlow is one of our friends. We do know him, so he was fine with it. And There was no controversial decisions at all.
I think it's a fantastic strategy.
No, yeah.
You could plant somebody.
That's the way
in a position of authority. It's a great idea.
Oh, look, here's the scorecard we can see on the screen with all of your names on there. Some fantastic English names on there. How does it get between the family members? Is it very, very competitive between you all?
As you get older, you work on that, don't you? And you keep that competitiveness out of it. And it's really to play with your sons. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, it's a lovely
We've
thing
all
to
got
do.
sons in it. That's why we do it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, Anne Widdecombe gives her take on a bombshell poll that is very, very good news for Nigel Farage and reform. But first, should footballers just stop taking the knee? It's time for our head-to-head. Yes, so taking the knee is back. Premier League players will do the BLM-inspired gesture 6 times this season, including before this weekend's opening fixtures, to show their commitment to fighting racism and discrimination. But why is taking the knee a pointless stunt which started before the Premier League games in June 2020 still happening? Look, after all, several players have hit out and actually refused to do it in the past few seasons. Former Crystal Palace player Wilfried Zaha was the first to break ranks, branding it degrading, while Brentford and England striker Ivan Toney said players were being used as puppets and has stood tall ever since. But what do you think? Should footballers now stop taking the knee? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews. And while you're there, go and vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this are former professional footballer Jason Cundy and GB News presenter Nana Okoye. Both of you, thank you very, very much. Great to have you both on the show. Nana, I will start with you. Do you think that footballers should stop taking the knee?
Well, to be honest, I don't know why they even started. If I'm totally honest with you, it is an empty gesture. Let's look at what it came from. It came from Black Lives Matter, which was in the States. That has turned out to be a bit of a fraudulent organisation. The woman whose colours who set it up, she's done for about $80 million that was raised. She spent it on houses and cars. If you look to the UK, there's been Zara Aleem from Black Lives Matter, who was put in jail for misappropriating £22,000 of funds. Then if you look to the whole reason why they're doing this is supposedly the racist killing of George Floyd. Yes, he was murdered, it was horrible, but you know, you could argue that maybe it wasn't to do with race. 2 officers were white, 1 was black, the other was Asian. They were all culpable. Yes, the guy who put his knee on his neck was white, but they were all culpable, all of them. So to me, the gesture is pointless. And also the FA are so rich, they really wanted to stamp out racism. They could invest some money properly in it. If you look at the top of the FA, how many managers are black in the FA? You've got 43% of the players are black, about 57% are white or black or mixed. And at the top of the FA, people managing the football clubs, I think it's 1.something% of black people. If they're really serious about racism, why don't they start there?
I'll come back to you. Jason, well, yeah, I suppose, look, come back to that, mate. Why should they take the knee?
Well, it's actually the Premier League that are doing this. It's the biggest, most watched league in the world. And we have, I think, been brilliant at trying to stamp out racism. There's a huge amount that needs to be done. But you can only see from what happened with the Argentinian winning side when they won the Copa America, how there are parts of this world that actually are still spouting racism and still think it's acceptable. And I think that the Premier League realises it's the most watched league in the world. This is not just about what goes on in this country, it's about what goes on globally. And I think this is a part of the game that the Premier League recognise that they have a voice. Now, in terms of individuality, there have been lots of complaints. Players decided, you mentioned Ivan Toney, Wilfried Zaha, there's been many actually that have decided not to do it, because the point that Nana makes is a valid one. There is not enough being done, not just in this country. There's still racism on the terraces. There's still racism in society. But I think if you look across what's still going on, that football has a voice. And I think that the Premier League have realised that their voice can be heard. And I think to do it 6 games out of the 38-game season, I think shows that it's still very much top of the list. But on top of that, what more can be done? There's no point taking the knee on Saturday and Sunday if we find on next weekend that there's racism still going on. There's still plenty of work to be done.
Yeah, and Nana, I wonder whether or not they stand accused of a little bit of kind of shameless virtue signalling, though, really, because you saw the likes of Jordan Henderson, or it's a different issue, but, you know, it was very big and prominent when it came to the rainbow armband or whatever it was, and then the first whiff of a bit of cash, basically, it appeared to me, anyway, that he was straight off to Saudi Arabia, where, you know, I'm not quite sure exactly what the horrible punishment for being gay over there is now, but I'm pretty sure it is death.
Well, it's a total virtue signal. It's for you to show me that you are non-racist in your action of bending down on a knee. But to me, I say get off your knees, get on your feet and do something active about it. I don't want to see people on their knees. I want to see the FA or UEFA or all of those FIFA all leading from the top. And that would be that if half of the players, and it's practically half of them, are of colour, why is that not even remotely replicated at the top? So to me, I just see it as an empty gesture. What is the point of it? It's been going on for years and still not much has happened. And the bottom line is this: these clubs are rich. Football is rich. If they really wanted to prosecute everybody, and we've seen Keir Starmer, he's able to prosecute people using cameras and everything. If they really wanted to prosecute racists on the terraces, they really could, and they haven't. And they've had years to do it. So why would getting down on one knee now change it? It's not changing anything. It needs to start from the top, and it hasn't.
I do wonder, Jason, whether or not it has much of an impact. I mean, look, when I obviously don't watch as much football as you. I mean, it's literally your job, right? But I do watch quite a bit of it. And, you know, at the start of games or in the highlight shows, etc., match of the day, it does seem like, you know, right, OK, so we'll take the knee and the commentator will go out of his way or her way to tell us what a wonderful thing this is. And, you know, suspiciously at times I do wonder whether or not the fan sound goes down, because I've been at a few football games where it's not been that well received, but you don't tend to see that in the highlight shows. And then there might be a round of applause for something else, and there might be something else going on, and eventually we get a bit of football. You know, do the fans actually like this?
I don't know. You have to ask them, to be honest with you. I think some section of fans, the ones that are booing, I think there are many different people why they boo. I think what Nana's point she's making, I think, is valid, that people do think it's virtual signalling, that it's done for show. But I think that it can only be a good thing, in my mind, that we are discussing this, and we all realise I think in 100 years' time, this conversation could still be going on. There still needs to be work done. There still needs to make sure that the Argentinian national side to be singing racist songs about black African-American footballers that now play for the French national side are getting racially abused. That tells me only one thing, that the message is still not getting across. Forget this country. Nana, you're being a little bit small-minded.
No. One at a time. Go on, Jason, finish.
But listen, I hear you talking about other countries, but they're rich. The football leagues in other countries in
it's not just up to football to change society. This is a society problem.
I'm talking. So they could do something about it. Why is it down to people to bend down on a knee when you've got these rich businesses who could actually they could get rid of this in a heartbeat by actually taking action when people are racist?
All right, go on, Jason.
They're not, though, are they?
No, but listen, why are you having a pop at football?
I'm not having a pop at football. You asked me a question about taking the knee. The answer to me, I'm talking about racism. Racism is serious. If you think bending down on one knee to show how non-racist you are gets rid of it, it doesn't. It needs to start from the people who are running football, who will not allow it within their stadium. Why are they allowing it?
Let's let Jason in.
This isn't football's problem. Football has an issue with racism, but let me tell you now, football does. It's not football's problem. Football's trying to do something about it.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're not bending down on a knee. So you think that bending down on one knee does something about it? I've literally gone through and explained to you how, if you look at the organisations that run football, how they have hardly any black people at the top. So if they're really serious about racism, then that should be coming from the top. When
give me an
you've got at least
example,
half the players of colour, and in other countries they could manage it properly.
Give me an example.
Of what?
Of what changes you'd make? What changes in football would you make?
Okay, so the changes I'd make would be from the top. I would make sure that I enable. Well, stop talking, and I might be able to say it. I would enable some of those players who may want to be managers to actually open the door, because it seems a bit odd that you've got literally half your players who are black and you've got nothing at the top there. So that's one of the things I'd be looking at. The second thing I would do is absolutely prosecute everybody who dares be racist on the stand. So if there is racist chanting, they will be prosecuted, just like Keir Starmer is doing with the riots. That will shut them up. So why are they not doing that? Why are they not? Why are you relying on people bending down on one knee to say, I'm so non-racist, look at me, aren't I good? Nothing is changing. They've been doing it for years. Nothing has changed.
Sorry, Nana, there's going to be 50, 60, 70,000 people at some stadiums. You want to police that stadium. What would you do if you were the police?
Well, I would do exactly what Keir Starmer's doing. You use, the facial recognition cameras, and then come for these people later. You've got thousands of people on protest. I would start there. And you know what? Just in the same way that puts people off, that would put people off.
Honestly, Nana, seriously, you're not a football fan, are you?
I actually, that's not true. I am-ish. I just don't.
So how many games do you go to? Then? How many games do you go to?
I don't go to football games. I don't go to football games.
Well, this was my point, right? Because there might be chances, but trying to prove racism in a 70, 80,000 stadium, that is not as easy what you've just made out.
All right.
You're talking garbage.
What? So people are chanting racist chants and throwing bananas?
What are they chanting? Show me it. Show me it.
Well,
give me examples.
I don't know what they're chanting, but these people are being racist.
Of course you don't.
What you're saying,
guys.
You're saying there's loads of racism. If there's loads of racism, surely you can see
guys,
it. Where is it then?
I mean, this is very good, but I am going to have to stop it, I'm afraid, because I've got a load of other stuff on. But thank you very, very much. Look, guys, both of you, thank you. That was a proper head-to-head, which I must admit I wasn't quite sure I wanted to end. But alas, here we are. That is former professional footballer Jason Cundy and GBNews Spencer Nana Aquia, who are definitely not going to be going out for dinner anytime soon together, are they? Like, who do you agree with? Should footballers stop taking the knee? Jess on X says, never should have done it in the first place. Suzanne says, what? Is this still happening? How tedious. Joe says, politics has no place in sport, especially one that caused so much trouble and gave no money to those it boasted to be helping. All right. Your verdict is in. 94% of you think they should stop taking the knee. 4% of you say they shouldn't. Oof, right, we're off to a flyer tonight. Coming up, as a new poll puts Nigel Farage's Reform UK party on 21%. Has the Reform UK leader been vindicated after he came under attack from multiple Tory leadership candidates? Reform's Justice spokeswoman Anne Widdecombe gives her views shortly. Plus, Harry and Meghan, they've touched down in Colombia. OK. I'll reveal their ridiculous itinerary shortly. But next, Labour's soft justice scandal laid bare as career criminals with more than 100 previous convictions are not being sent to jail. Is Keir Starmer making Britain less safe? Prisoner rehabilitation campaigner Winston Davis is live and is next.
Hey, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be sunny spells for many of us and just a few showers in the north. But before then, we do have some wet weather around at the moment. We do have a frontal system that's still making its way southeastwards, and this is going to bring quite a bit of cloud, quite a bit of rain across much of England and Wales through the end of the evening, pushing away towards the southeast as we go through the early hours of Friday morning. Could be some heavy bursts amongst it before it eventually gradually clears away towards the southeast through tomorrow itself. Behind it, some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures may drop a little bit lower than they have done through some recent nights, some places getting into mid-single figures. So first thing tomorrow morning, it is going to be a bit of a damp start across some parts of the far southeast, particularly towards Kent. Here we could have some outbreaks of rain for a time before that front clears away. Across the southwest of England, it's brighter, also across much of Wales and the Midlands, some decent sunshine early on. And a similar story further north for northern England, Northern Ireland and into Scotland. There will be some decent sunny spells here, but for western Scotland, quite a few showers already developing, and these showers are going to continue as we go through the day tomorrow. They're always going to be most frequent across western, northwestern parts of Scotland, and here we will also have some blustery winds pushing their way in, and those blustery winds are going to add to the slightly cooler feel to things across northern parts of the UK. Further towards the south-southeast, once the cloud and the rain clears away, it should feel pretty warm with temperatures in the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and again we're going to see some showers across northern and western parts. Not many showers, but a few coming through at times, and some brisk winds towards the far northwest. A greater chance of staying dry and avoiding the showers towards more eastern southeastern parts. Sunday looks like a relatively similar day with more showers across the north before some wet weather arrives for many of us by Monday. Bye-bye.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, a new poll appears to be good news for Nigel Farage, actually. He was slammed by multiple Tory leadership contenders, wasn't he? But he's gone up in the polls, despite everything that you've been hearing about him in the media. But first, shocking new figures from the Ministry of Justice have revealed that career criminals with more than 100 convictions are being spared jail, with the proportion walking free apparently quadrupling in the past 16 years. So offenders with more than 50 convictions have avoided jail sentences in more than 50,000 cases since 2007, bringing the total number of career criminals that avoided jail to over 3,000 last year. Now, it comes after two men were handed jail sentences for social media posts relating to recent rioting, and a 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl, actually, with no prior offences, became the youngest to be convicted over the disorder. Look, it begs the question, doesn't it? Has the justice system got its priorities right? Is this yet more evidence of two-tier justice? Well, I'm very pleased now, actually, to be joined by former prisoner, now social campaigner, Winston Davies. Winston, look, great to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
So this looks bad on paper. You hold up those, 13-year-old girl getting prosecuted, someone who's got, convictions as long as their arm walking free.
Yeah.
Is it as bad as that for you?
I mean, look, it looks bad, but when you put it into context, it's like 0.25% or something like that of people over 100 convictions that are escaping from prison. And if we look back over the last 15 years, same time period, we've had a 50% increase in prison sentences. You're 3 times more likely to have a 10-year or more prison sentence. Lifers going to prison will be spending an average of 18 years versus 13 years. And our prison population has gone from 60 million through to 60,000 through to nearly 90,000. You know, so the crimes and sentences are getting longer, the punishment is getting more. So this flies in the face of actually the statistics of that.
Why is it, do you think, that we seem to have people now, in my view, who just don't really fear the law anymore? Do you know, it does seem like we've had a breakdown in law and order.
I mean, we've got this, right? 59% of all people that come into prison are going to be coming in for a 12-month sentence or less.
Yeah.
There's been proven that prison sentences of 12 months or less are not effective deterrents. So what happens is people come in, they get around the same kind of people that they're out with outside, they continue taking drugs, they ever lose their housing, lose their relationships, lose maybe their jobs, and then as soon as they come out, they're back to square one with no intervention. So no courses, no training, no therapy, nothing that... Look, I went to prison. I trained, I did therapy, I got a career, I've changed my life around, but I spent enough time in there to be able to do that. And these ones that are doing the shorter sentences, they're saying it doesn't actually work having the shorter sentences. So I've been saying for a long time, you can't just lock people up. You've got to make rehabilitation a priority, particularly those that are in for shorter sentences. The average sentence in this country is 22 months. While they're there for those 11 months, or the half of that, you've got to be doing the work.
One of the things that seems to be a bit tricky at the moment is that we have a government who has decided that the way to try to stop these riots is to send some people and try to make it as high profile as possible, that they're going to send those people to prison for a relatively long period of time in relation to what they've done or something. Right? So they have decided there, apparently, that prison is a deterrent to people. But then in other cases, perhaps we've decided that it's not. Like with your more petty crimes, like with shoplifting, we've decided, actually, prison's not a deterrent for those people. So how can those things both be true at the same time? I mean, look, the people that have been sent to prison right now, I said last week, I think that it's almost a statement from the government to quell the riots. And a week later, there hasn't been any more riots, so maybe that was a good tact. However, the people that have gone to prison now, they're going to be feeling it. What I found interesting, though, was that they said that 70% of all those that were gone to prison for the rioting had criminal records. Some of them with long criminal records, some of them career criminals, as we said in this report. And when you look at people that are going to prison, 57% of them, I think it is, have a reading age of literacy skills of 11 years old. So these people, we're in an information age. They don't have the ability to disseminate between the information they're seeing on Facebook being real, or X, or wherever it is, and it not being real, or being fake news. Therefore, they're going out and committing this crime. Can I ask, what's it like in prison? Like, is the actual... like, when you go in there, is it a massive wake-up call, and does it actually put you off wanting to go back in again? Because clearly for some people it doesn't.
100%, yeah. For me, it was the best and worst thing ever, because it was, you know, you are locked up with people that have got nothing to live for. You could walk around constantly waiting for somebody could easily come around and stab you or do whatever. That's what it's supposed to be, as a deterrent, and it was a deterrent for me. I didn't go back, right? But if you've got nothing to live for and you've got no home, you've got no family, you're addicted to drugs and you're out of anything, going to prison is actually quite good. I remember some guys would go to prison, they would get themselves clean, they would look great, you'd speak to them, like, oh, that's a nice guy, whatever. Gets out, a week later he's back in, a month later he's back in, because they get straight back into the same routines what they was doing before.
Do you think it's fair, just in light of that, then, what it's like in prison, to send some people who have said some awful things online? I'm not trying to diminish what some of the things people said online, right? But for all intents and purposes, were like middle-aged people, some of them have not had criminal records, to land them into an adult prison for 20 months or 2 years. I mean, do you think that could actually be quite dangerous for them?
So it's two things on this, right? If one of the people that was incited by what they posted had gone out and committed a murder, what would the conversation we would be having then? Yeah. It's justified. So the potential of what they could have done, burning down mosques or whatever they was going to do, could have been. However, I am personally concerned that the possibility that we are moving too far to censorship. There's got to be that balance. Of course, we don't want people inciting violence, inciting hatred and whatnot. We don't want that. But at the same time, I want to be able to speak my truth. I want to come on here and not feel like I've got to watch every word that I say unless I'm going to get a knock at the door and myself getting nicked. So there's that balance, Patrick.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's interesting. Will be interesting to see how they get on in prison, because the other aspect to it is, you know, if they're going into prison and they've been sentenced for the riots, the implication is that they're now far right, and I don't reckon they do that well at behind bars.
100%. But then I sort of say, for me, I've got to practice what I preach, and I think that's the perfect time for them to change the way they're thinking or intervene the way that they've been thinking, get to mix with some people that have been, you know, writing about, complaining about and unhappy about, and understand actually those people have probably got much more in common than the people that sit at the top pulling the strings and sending all this propaganda out than the people that they're banged up with.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Look, I've really enjoyed that. Thank you very much. I'd love to have you back on the show, mate.
Top man.
You take care. All right, that is Winston Davis there, who is now a social campaigner, former prisoner as well. A government spokesperson told us this. They said the first job of this government is to keep people safe, and the new Lord Chancellor has taken action to make sure that the justice system is always able to lock up dangerous offenders, protect the public and reduce reoffending. Independent judges and magistrates decide sentences, but we are committed to making sure that punishments fit the severity of the crime. So that's what they've had to say about it. Coming up, BBC presenter Chris Packham has a message for Barclays customers.
But if anyone here is banking with Barclays, then I suggest you stick your head in a bucket of fuel and set fire to it.
Yeah, all right. I mean, imagine if that was Nigel Farage. So why hasn't there been more serious consequences for Mr Packham? But is this another example, do you think, of kind of double standards at play in Britain? I'm going to tackle that at 10. But next, yes, it is over to Reform UK, because now, apparently, the latest polls have them 12 points behind Labour. So they are officially, in that sense, the second party. So were the Tory leadership hopefuls wrong, do you think, to slam their leadership and other MPs for their response to the riots? Reform Justice spokeswoman Anne Whittaker, she's live and she's next. Lovely.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Alex, can you tell us about Tom Cruise's diet?
Tom Cruise's diet, I mean, so there was the story today in the Daily Mail talking about the fact that obviously, you know, the guy has a very, very strict diet. He pretty much has no alcohol in his diet, has very strict times he eats. He only eats meat and fish.
Isn't happy.
And actually, can I just say, I think this is very depressing. You know, life is short. I don't know why people have, and lots of my friends who go to the gym, they're absolutely obsessed with only having chicken and rice and barely any sauce on it. It's just, what's the point, you know?
You make a good point. Life is short. What do they...
And so is Tom Cruise.
YOLO, you only live once.
Yeah, YOLO.
But then you can live your life as you want to live it. So if you want to live it the healthiest person ever in the whole world, then, you know, that's your one life.
You raised a great point in the meeting today, which is 64 old anymore? It's not, sort of 62. It's not old, is it?
No.
62 is the new 40.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though,
If you don't
Tom Cruise is a multi-millionaire. Doesn't he want to just, like, relax and enjoy his life now? Why is he still getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go to the gym and eating chicken breast with no sauce on it?
OK, Tom Cruise is another one of these driven people. Tom Cruise is absolutely 100% driven to drive a fighter pilot aeroplane. I mean, how could you actually learn to drive a plane? He is so driven, he is so disciplined, and when you're that disciplined, you know about blood, alcohol, sugar spikes. I bet you he drinks vinegar. Bet you any money he's into gut health. I'm telling you, gut health is in. Everyone's talking about gut health.
But what's the point when you're 62?
No,
I'm hoping when I'm 62 that I'll just chill out.
He doesn't.
No way.
He doesn't need the money
Eat
either.
some
He can just chill. Like,
no, he doesn't want to chill. He so doesn't want to chill. I tell you what, in Hollywood, because my husband's a film producer, in Hollywood, you know when they retire, they're either 90 or they're dead.
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, I will show you some shocking footage of BBC presenter and climate activist Chris Packer making comments that police might want to have a little look at. But first, a new poll has put Nigel Farage within sniffing distance of snatching 20 seats, as Reform UK's support surges to a whopping 21% of the vote share. Well, it comes after a couple of things, doesn't it? Firstly, the fact that every single Tory leadership candidate has ruled out of him joining the party. The other thing is, of course, wall-to-wall criticism of his response to the riots. Well, I'm joined now by Reform UK's Immigration and Justice spokesperson, Anne Widdecombe. Anne, I mean, is this actually a vindication of everything Nigel Farage has said about the riots?
Of course it is. And I mean, are we surprised that this has happened? I mean, Labour has no plan at all to deal with immigration. Absolutely none. The Conservative Party had Rwanda, which never happened, and they had no plan B. We have, right from the start in Reform, put forward very clear proposals for controlling both legal and particularly illegal immigration. So is it surprising that people are listening to us? And is it surprising that more people have decided, yes, they do want a party that will do something about it and not just talk?
Yeah, what does this say, though, about how seriously out of touch maybe the media is? Because, I mean, I've seen things called the Farage riots. I've heard... I mean, I've actually spoken to Nigel about this. I've heard people on other news channels actually really pinning some quite vile things on him. And I would argue in some cases, maybe even quivering on the edge of putting a target on his back, right? But the public now more of the public would vote Reform than before the last election. So, I mean, what does that tell you?
Well, I think what it tells us is, first of all, that the commentary is, as you rightly say, out of touch. But secondly, I think a lot of people are now saying to themselves, oh, I wish I'd voted Reform. You know, we wouldn't have had these riots. We would have had some actual policies to deal with it. So I think, we have been quite consistent throughout in putting forward concrete proposals. We are, and again, have been quite consistently throughout, the only party doing that.
When it comes to the Tory leadership candidates all saying, at this stage anyway, that Nigel wouldn't be welcome, I wonder if that's actually a good thing for Nigel. He appears to have no interest in wanting to join anyway. So it's a party he literally doesn't want to go to, isn't it, for once?
Well, I would think so, certainly at the moment. None of those leaders, I think, would change very much as far as the control of immigration, the control of woke, getting back common sense, all the things that Reform stands for. I don't think they do. So I think Nigel is very relaxed and not to be a part of it.
One thing I will say, though, is, as Labour are now finding out, it is much easier to be in opposition than it is to actually be in power when everything is now your responsibility and up to you. And is it not very, very easy for Nigel, or indeed yourself, to say, well, these riots wouldn't have happened if it was on our watch? I mean, you can't necessarily prove that, can you? I mean, there might have just been other riots, people rioting against Nigel.
Well, we've made it very clear that we have policies. The other parties have not got policies. That is the crucial point that I keep making. People aren't attracted to us because we're, giving them sound bites, because we aren't. They're attracted to us more and more because we are saying we share people's priorities, that this is important, and we have concrete proposals to deal with it. Now, we're in opposition and we've offered concrete proposals. Keir Starmer in opposition didn't. He just offered more international waffle. Rishi Sunak had nothing beyond the Rwanda plan. We at least have concrete plans, and I think more people.
Just to be clear, Anne, sorry, but so what are these concrete plans?
Well, one is we turn the votes around, and before you say you can't do it, Australia did, Belgium did, it can be done. The second thing is some people will get through, even if we do that. They will be detained in secure accommodation, not put in hotels, so they can't disappear. And we will know where they are, and therefore can return them, which we can't do if they've disappeared into the underground economy, which is what the overwhelming majority of asylum seekers do when they know they're about to be refused.
OK, all right. Well, hey, look, obviously, we may never find out if those things work. It's quite a long time, conceivably, until the next election, Anne, but who knows where Reform could be by that stage. But the polling at the moment has you on 21%, I think it is, which is significantly up from the last election. So there we go. Anne Widdecombe there, thank you very, very much. That is, of course, the one and only Anne Widdecombe. Now, coming up, Harry and Meghan have landed in Colombia, but their itinerary is as ridiculous as you would expect. I will reveal exactly what they're planning on doing in Colombia. It's already got off to a weird start. But next, Chris Packham has been saying all sorts of stuff, hasn't he?
But if anyone here is banking with Barclays, then I suggest you stick your head in a bucket of fuel and set fire to it.
Is it not time that maybe face some consequences for that? Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be sunny spells for many of us and just a few showers in the north. But before then, we do have some wet weather around at the moment. We do have a frontal system that's still making its way southeastwards, and this is going to bring quite a bit of cloud, quite a bit of rain across much of England and Wales through the end of the evening, pushing away towards the southeast as we go through the early hours of Friday morning. Could be some heavy bursts amongst it before it eventually clears away towards the southeast through tomorrow itself. Behind it, some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures may drop a little bit lower than they have done through some recent nights, some places getting into mid-single figures. So first thing tomorrow morning, it is going to be a bit of a damp start across some parts of the far southeast, particularly towards Kent. Here we could have some outbreaks of rain for a time before that front clears away. Across the southwest of England, it's brighter, also across much of Wales and the Midlands, some decent sunshine early on, and a similar story further north for northern England, Northern Ireland and into Scotland. There will be some decent sunny spells here, but for western Scotland, quite a few showers already developing, and these showers are going to continue as we go through the day tomorrow. They're always going to be most frequent across western, northwestern parts of Scotland, and here we will also have some blustery winds pushing their way in, and those blustery winds are going to add to the slightly cooler feel to things across northern parts of the UK. Further towards the south-southeast, once the cloud and the rain clears away, it should feel pretty warm with temperatures in the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and again we're going to see some showers across northern and western parts. Not many showers, but a few coming through at times, and some brisk winds towards the far northwest. A greater chance of staying dry and avoiding the showers towards more eastern southeastern parts. Sunday looks like a relatively similar day with more showers across the north before some wet weather arrives for many of us by Monday. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Celebrate a spectacular summer with your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash in our Great British Giveaway. It's the biggest prize of the year so far, and it's totally tax-free. What would you spend that on? Luxury holidays, a new car, or just put it away for a rainy day? Whatever you do with £30,000 in tax-free cash, make sure you don't miss out on a chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
But if anyone here is banking with Barclays, then I suggest you stick your head in a bucket of fuel and set fire to it.
Should the BBC's Chris Packham be sent to jail for those comments? Well... if he tweeted something about the riots, he'd be doing 3 years by now, wouldn't he? Two-tier justice and... I reveal Harry and Meghan's absolutely ridiculous plans for their Colombia trip. Plus... more brazen crime in lawless Britain and... is monkeypox on its way to Britain? I've got all the front pages with journalist Harriet Sargent, Tory peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. Oh yes, and I want you to tell me, please, what you think's happening here. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Should BBC presenter Chris Packham finally face serious consequences? Next.
Patrick, thank you and good evening. The top stories this hour. Hollywood actor Matthew Perry's assistant and 2 doctors are among 5 people who've been charged after the Friends star died from an accidental ketamine overdose last October. A US attorney said the investigation uncovered a broad underground criminal network responsible for distributing a large quantity of ketamine to Perry and to others. The 54-year-old was found unresponsive in the pool at his residence in Los Angeles. A medical examiner said Perry had been receiving ketamine infusion therapy for depression and anxiety, with his last known treatment 1.5 weeks prior to his death. US Attorney for the Central District of California, Martin Estrada, spoke during a press conference this evening.
As I mentioned, the defendants in this case knew what they were doing was wrong. When they'd refer to the ketamine, they used coded language. They'd refer to it using terms such as, quote, Dr. Pepper, or quote, bots, or quote, cans. Also, defendants Placencia and Chavez, as medical doctors, knew full well this was not the proper way to administer ketamine, and they even talked about that in their exchanges.
In other news, the proportion of A-level entries awarded top grades is up on last year and remains above pre-pandemic levels. Hundreds of thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their exam results today. More than 3/4 of English 18-year-old applicants have been accepted into their first choice of university, according to the government. However, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson earlier said there are still inequalities in the education system. Now, drivers are being urged to avoid scanning QR codes to pay for parking following a number of scams. The RAC is advising drivers to make payments only with cash, cards or official apps. Recently, fraudsters have been placing stickers featuring QR codes on parking signs in locations across the country, taking victims to fake websites to input their card details before spending money from their accounts. And as you've been hearing, Sweden has confirmed it's recorded its first case of a contagious new variant of monkeypox. That's the day after the World Health Organization declared it a global health emergency. The strain emerged in the Democratic Republic of Congo. With more than 17,000 cases and over 570 deaths in Africa this year, according to the WHO, which exceeds last year's total. Scientists from the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention report 96% of all cases and deaths have been in DR Congo. The UK Health Security Agency says there are currently no cases of the virus here in the UK, and its deputy director claims the risk is currently considered low. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been welcomed to Colombia as they begin their 4-day tour of the South American nation. Harry and Meghan were met in the capital, Bogotá, by Colombia's Vice President Francia Márquez and her husband. They spent around half an hour at the Vice President's residence, where they exchanged welcome gifts and were offered tea, coffee and traditional Colombian cheese bread. It's understood they'll focus on the impact of the digital world on young people, the military community and female empowerment. The Duke and Duchess will also explore Colombia's history and culture. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Can you just imagine for a second, please, if Nigel Farage said this?
But if anyone here is banking with Barclays, then I suggest you stick your head in a bucket of fuel and set fire to it. Because you're burning our planet down, and it's time to put this stuff behind us.
That was occasional BBC presenter Chris Packham there, telling people to essentially set themselves on fire if they dare bank with Barclays. Now, if Farage or anyone on the right had said that about any other group of people, they'd be in handcuffs and looking at a few years in prison, wouldn't they? Now, I don't actually want him to go to prison, all right? Unlike the government, I believe in free speech. But it's another blatant double standard, isn't it? Now, if this was the other way round, it would be front page of The Guardian, rolling news coverage. But for lovely lefty tree hugger Packham, the only pickup it gets is the country squire. Yeah, that's right. There it is. Is that language not potentially quite likely to incite harm to others? Is that not extreme rhetoric? Will he face any prosecution? Obviously not. He's one of the good guys, isn't he? Now, Packham's got form. He sailed close to the wind with this Channel 4 documentary.
It's time to make up my own mind and decide if I think it's time to break the law.
No government, no major political party has ever significantly addressed the issue. They haven't been listening to us, the climate activists.
He also interviewed now jailed Extinction Rebellion founder Roger Hallam, and it all got a bit weird.
It's going to be cheeky.
You can be as cheeky as you like.
You do something and end up getting banged up.
Me?
Yeah.
Get arrested?
No, you get banged up.
In prison?
Yeah. Because people need inspiration. And we know there's a handful of people in British public life who people enormously respect, and you're one of them.
If you can convince me that that's the best thing to do, then that's on my agenda. Yeah. There's no question of that.
Yeah.
That is the same Roger Hallam who said this.
The other thing about social collapse is the complete loss of material security, or law and order, as you might say. A gang of young men come into your house, they take your girlfriend, they take your mother, they put her onto the table, and they gang rape her in front of you. And then after that, they take a hot stick and they poke out your eyes and they blind you.
And will the BBC now end their association with the presenter, who appears to have a total disdain for a large number of licence fee payers? Well, this is what they told us. Chris Packham is a freelancer, not a member of staff, and he's not currently on air. His private activities and views are his own, not the BBC's. That's convenient, isn't it? And now it's emerged that Just Stop Oil are planning to break in to Windsor Castle, yes, where Princess Catherine is recovering from cancer. They're planning to bring Windsor as a whole to a standstill as well. They also reportedly want to use old people and people with disabilities so that when the police drag them away, it will look really bad for the authorities. Yeah, are this Extinction Rebellion not just a bit unhinged, and they're plotting things and they're encouraging other people to plot things that cost money and could risk lives. You know, have we got any room in prison for them? Or is it full of middle-aged women who put something dodgy on Facebook? Let's get our thoughts on my panel now. We've got journalist and author Harriet Sargent, we've got Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and we are also joined by ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Now, Harriet, again, I will emphasise, I don't actually want Chris Packham to go to prison. That's not really how I roll. But what I am saying is there appears to be quite a shameless double standard in the media and arguably with our police force here.
Well, I agree, and I think, I mean, here is just another presenter, BBC presenter, who is meant to be, freelance presenter,
well, yeah.
We're told, yeah.
He's on a lot.
Let's be exact about that. But who is meant to be neutral, who is paid to be neutral, and yet is using his position as a BBC freelance presenter to push his own agenda as an activist. And we are seeing increasingly this language of these activists becoming more and more unhinged. But I think Chris Packham is quite clever. He's just treading the... I mean, what he said about blowing up oil pipes is actually even more interesting, because he's been promoting this book that tells you how to blow up an oil pipe.
Really?
Yeah.
I must admit I wasn't aware of that. So,
yes.
OK.
Yes.
All right.
And he keeps on... When he was interviewed about that, he said, oh, you know, really, it's all a joke. But actually, the book itself is quite serious. I mean, you look at the book on... It's a quite serious thing on how to do this. So he's treading a very delicate line here. OK,
all right. Well, obviously, Chris Packham is not here to defend himself against that particular allegation, but, Sean, if Nigel Farage, or you, or anyone, really, on the right, had said something along the lines of that, you know, if you support refugees, you know, you should dip your head in a bucket of petrol and set it on fire because this country's going to go to hell in a handcart, or something like that, then that would have been wall-to-wall coverage. You know, the Farage riots would have been back, you'd have been a far-right lunatic. But, you know, Chris Packham says it, and it just gets picked up in the country squire.
But this is the point that we have a double standard here. So when people talk about the MSN, other people ridicule them who are in this supposed MSN. But incidents like this show that actually there is a chattering classes who will defend certain people if you're seen as one of the good guys. Look, to be clear, I don't think he should go to jail for what he said. But the other piece to be said, if the government are going to start sending people to jail for scary language, they need to be very clear what is considered scary language. The whole thing with how to be an eco-activist and terrorist and cause disruption and blow things up, I think is actually really scary and is the kind of thing that inspires people to take action, telling you to dip your head in a bucket of petrol, not so much, in my opinion. But the point is, somebody does need to say, OK, where the level is. And the BBC are correct. He is freelance, and it is his personal views. But they must understand, if they keep him there, it then looks like they're platforming his agenda.
OK. Now, Matthew, we do see, and we interview plenty of them on this show and others like it as well, quite a lot of the activists of the Just Stop Oil Extinction Rebellion are very young, very impressionable. I think a couple of them might have other issues going on as well. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that genuinely from my experiences of having spoken firsthand with a couple of them, who will see someone like that, who's like, you know, a big figure in the eco movement, making that kind of statement about people who bank with Barclays, of whom there are millions in this country. Do you not think there is a risk there that him saying that stuff incites someone to take physical action?
Well, I wonder if anybody who employs him banks with Barclays, I can't know if the BBC does or not, but I mean, I wonder if he'll be taking the Barclays cheque or the transfer from a Barclays account. I mean, I think, as Harriet said, he just about stayed the right line of the law by not inciting others, not inciting people to do things to others, but to do it to themselves. So that's why he probably won't be arrested on this occasion. He certainly needs to be cancelled generally and cancelled specifically by the BBC.
Oh, but you'd cancel Packham?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is absolutely unacceptable language. I mean, you know, I mean, I don't think it's arrest. I don't think there is two-tier policing in the sense that if he's saying, you know, you should go out and do X to people who bank with Barclays, then I think he should be arrested just like the people on Facebook, because the people who've been arrested for putting things on Facebook haven't been arrested for expressing views. They've been arrested for saying, go and burn down migrant hostels with people in them. And if he says go and, you know, not asking people to torch themselves, but go and torch those people, then he should be arrested.
I would argue as well, though, that there is actually something else that some people have been done for, which is the spread of quote-unquote misinformation, right? And if he is there saying, you know, that this is what's going to happen to all of us, i.e. saying that, you know, Barclays is in some way responsible for us all basically being incinerated by climate change. I mean, that's quite dubious information. I mean, there is a misinformation angle to it, essentially, Harriet.
Yes, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. The other thing I found quite disturbing listening to an interview by him was this whole thing that ethics trumps the law, and that if you feel that your ethics are under threat, as eco-terrorists do, that gives you absolute permission to break any law. Now, that's incredibly dangerous, and yet he gets away with saying that on television a lot. I mean, I've seen a lot of him saying this again and again. And surely, I mean, the thing is that anyone can make that argument. I mean, what is one man's ethics is another man's revolution.
Yeah.
So you have to. That's what's so important about the law, is that it's meant to be neutral and that we're all equal in front of it.
I think that's basically the point for me at this, which I don't want to see him go to prison. I don't actually really want to see him cancelled, but I do take your point on that. But I do think that if someone else with a different political persuasion had said something similar about a different issue, then they would have absolutely been nicked and cancelled forever.
I think they'd have been cancelled. I'm not sure they'd have been nicked.
This is the key thing when we talk about free speech. So often people on the left will attack you. You're on the right. But what I would like to say is, imagine when it's your views are no longer the cool view. You still will want to be able to make that view. So when people try to close you down just because you don't agree, they should bear that in mind. But what's really important here is, I still feel there's an element of his behaviour that is exciting people, that's inspiring people to take actions. And I think somebody does need to say to him, you know, enough is enough here, because you could be causing potential problems in the future. There's a corporate angle as well. A lot of these corporates are bent over backwards to please the likes of him and the Green Movement, but they still come for you anyway. So was it a waste of time?
That's a good message. That is a good message. Sorry, final word on this, Matthew. The other aspect of this story was that the Daily Mail appeared to have uncovered that people are going to be trying to storm Windsor Castle. Right, they've managed to get into some kind of Zoom meeting with Extinction Rebellion, and they're planning also to basically take Windsor as a whole.
Yeah.
Should the police now just take preemptive action against this lot? Or do we have to wait for this to happen?
I don't think you can pre-arrest people, because that's max totalitarianism. But as Keir Starmer said when he was in opposition, just stop all tactics are deplorable. They're the worst advertisements for anybody who's, they do the cause of climate justice harm. So what we do need to see is a very strong police response, and I'm glad we've got the intelligence, and the police should be there, ready and waiting before they can cause any trouble or disrupt our lives.
Because it's another aspect to it, the whole thing, which is that, OK, when they're doing people for social media posts and things like that, and they're saying, well, that could have had the potential to incite people. I do think that whilst I can absolutely see that, I do think that's a bit of a grey area. How do you prove that somebody who went down and did something to that migrant hotel, hypothetical example here, did that because of what they saw on Sandra's Facebook page, right? So if you have the likes of Extinction Rebellion, let's say they do get into Windsor Castle, how do we know if they've done...
I think if they're inciting, then they should be arrested.
But, I mean, the other thing is the absolute naivety of the authorities. I mean, listening to that Facebook WhatsApp group the Daily Mail has done, that the police and the local council have let 10,000 activists come and sort of have a happy camping thing round the palace.
Yeah, of course they have.
And they have been exploited.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Right, another great start to the show, so thank you very much. Coming up, my panel, they're going to be back, aren't they? Because we're going to be whizzing you through all of tomorrow's front pages. Oh, and these thieves certainly got more than they bargained for. I'll show you what happened next. But first, Harry and Meghan, they've touched down in Colombia. The Sussexes will take in the city of Bogota before heading off to somewhere else I can't pronounce on a quasi-royal tour, OK? But what the heck are they doing? I'm going to be joined as well by, someone who's very much in the know. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty, and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean, up to 90% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And in the last year, there's been 2 tax increases that have equated more to the last 3 years combined. So now, if you're a roll-your-own smoker, a 30-gram pouch of roll-your-own will cost £22.50, but you can buy a counterfeit pack of 50 grams for £3. So there's a massive disparity. A lot of illegal tobacco is imported, but we do also have a problem in the UK with illegal tobacco factories. So in the last month, there's been an illegal tobacco factory in Gateshead, in Bury, busted, producing roll-your-own tobacco. And on the 12th of July this month, West Midlands gang illegal tobacco factory, the gang was found guilty of producing illegal tobacco, and that was more than £5 million lost tax revenue to the government. And actually, all of those people found guilty got a suspended sentence.
And how does that work? They're literally importing container loads of raw tobacco and packaging it up in factories in Britain. And they're using what appears to be British packaging illegally?
Yeah, some of it is branded packaging, so some of it isn't the kind of unbranded packaging we'd see on cigarettes and roll-your-own now, but it's relatively simple to reproduce, especially RYO. Our own pack swap data now shows that about 50% of the roll-your-own market is illegal tobacco.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, Harry and Meghan, they have just touched down in Colombia's capital city of Bogota, where they were greeted by Vice President Francia Marquez and, well, we're reliably informed, some traditional dancers. Well, there you go. They'll also visit the first free town for escaped slaves in the Americas before heading to a Cali music festival that celebrates Afro-Colombian culture. There will also be events dedicated to the Invictus Games, mental health, female empowerment. But many Colombians think the Sussexes are just being used as political pawns by the failing left-wing government to divert attention from the regime's many scandals. Well, I'm very pleased to say I'm now joined by Mail Online's senior global reporter, Nick Pisa, who is on the ground in Bogota in Colombia. Nick, look, great to have you on the show. One thing that I think seems very odd to me is that this appears to be a royal tour from a couple that don't want to be royals.
Yes, that's right. And it has all the trappings with the security as well that's involved. We've seen sort of 14-car and police van convoys carrying the Sussexes through the streets of Bogota since they arrived this morning. They've been on 4 engagements since they arrived. The first one meeting the Vice President, Francia Marquez, then they went on to a school, and then they went on to this cultural exhibition in the city centre where there was some traditional dancing, some very colourful costumes, and you saw from that clip there that Harry and Meghan got up and danced around, clapped their hands, and they met those dancers afterwards as well. There's a bit of controversy with the Vice President, Francia Marquez, over the fact that she seems to travel everywhere by helicopter. But we should say she has been subjected to several death threats and also several attempted assassinations. In fact, one only 2 months ago on her father, where a car that he was travelling in with her nephew was riddled with bullets, but fortunately both of them escaped unhurt.
Yeah, well, fortunately they did, but again, it does raise serious questions about why Harry thinks that Great Britain might be a little bit too unsafe for him, but he's happy to stand next to someone who has, unfortunately, quite literally got a target on her back. Can I ask, what is the point of this trip? Because some people are saying, well, you are kind of just doing PR here for, you know, a regime that has faced serious questions. I mean, I believe the son of the Colombian president is up on money laundering charges, I think, in relation to drug traffickers in his own father's campaign.
That's right. I mean, there hasn't been that much interest from the ordinary Colombians that I've managed to speak to in the street. A lot of them, obviously, they know who they are, but they're just wondering what on earth they are going to do here. Obviously, their agenda is to promote cyberbullying. They're saying highlight women's empowerment, as you said in the introduction, and also look at the country's heritage and history. There's obviously a very strong link with the Afro-Caribbean, and we know Meghan on the visit to Nigeria was proud to emphasise her Nigerian roots there, and they will be making a visit up to that village, which was the first free town for African slaves later on over the weekend. But yes, there are concerns from the Colombians that maybe this is distracting from other more serious events domestically as well. They are concerned about the tensions between Colombia and Venezuela over the recent election over there. And they are focusing on the fact that maybe more should be done, focusing on the relationships with neighbouring countries as opposed to maybe this tour.
Yeah, well, quite possibly. So you think that Meghan is possibly, given the nature of some of the itinerary that we've outlined here, going to be trying to emphasise her own cultural roots while simultaneously bringing an education on cyberbullying to people in rural Colombia?
I think so, yes, definitely. I say the village that they're going to up near Cali was set up about 300 years ago. It's a free town set up by slaves who used to be in that area of South America, in that area of Colombia, and it has a very long history and heritage with Africa. And I think there will be a lot of emphasis on the connection to Africa when she visits that area with Harry at the weekend.
So just to emphasise, so from what you can gather, you know, you're on the ground, quite a lot of local apathy from people there saying we're not really that bothered about them, why are they here? Massive security presence, so what, about 15 armoured cars? Go on, just talk to us about what it is like, that security presence, go on.
Well, so they've closed off the streets surrounding the school that they visited, and they closed off the streets surrounding the cultural centre that they visited earlier today as well. And there is, as I say, a 15-car convoy that is following them around. There's also armed soldiers with them as well. The security is quite immense, and I think also we have to focus not only is that security on them, but also on the fact that, as I say, there have been these death threats to the Vice President, Francia Marquez.
Yeah, no, indeed. All right. Well, look, can I just say thank you very much for coming on and giving us, just a bit of a glimpse, really, what it's like on the ground. I would hope to chat to you again soon, actually, Nick. So thank you very much for that. It's Nick Peaser there, who's the Mail Online senior global reporter. I will just say this afterwards. What are they doing there? What is the point? Why don't you just go on holiday? Does anyone else find this a bit weird? Don't think it's a bit odd? Going on this kind of pseudo-royal tour? Anyway, coming up, I'll have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages with my panel of experts. Oh, yes. And what's going on over in Afghanistan? Yeah, I mean, it's not good, but I'll tell you what's happening next. This is Patrick Christys tonight, and we're on GB News.
Hey, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be sunny spells for many of us and just a few showers in the north. But before then, we do have some wet weather around at the moment. We do have a frontal system that's still making its way southeastwards, and this is going to bring quite a bit of cloud, quite a bit of rain across much of England and Wales through the end of the evening, pushing away towards the southeast as we go through the early hours of Friday morning. Could be some heavy bursts amongst it before it eventually slowly clears away towards the southeast through tomorrow itself. Behind it, some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures may drop a little bit lower than they have done through some recent nights, some places getting into mid-single figures. So first thing tomorrow morning, it is going to be a bit of a damp start across some parts of the far southeast, particularly towards Kent. Here we could have some outbreaks of rain for a time before that front clears away. Across the southwest of England, it's brighter, also across much of Wales and the Midlands, some decent sunshine early on. And a similar story further north for northern England, Northern Ireland and into Scotland. There will be some decent sunny spells here, but for western Scotland, quite a few showers already developing, and these showers are going to continue as we go through the day tomorrow. They're always going to be most frequent across western, northwestern parts of Scotland, and here we will also have some blustery winds pushing their way in, and those blustery winds are going to add to the slightly cooler feel to things across northern parts of the UK. Further towards the south-southeast, once the cloud and the rain clears away, it should feel pretty warm with temperatures in the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and again we're going to see some showers across northern and western parts. Not many showers, but a few coming through at times, and some brisk winds towards the far northwest. A greater chance of staying dry and avoiding the showers towards more eastern southeastern parts. Sunday looks like a relatively similar day with more showers across the north before some wet weather arrives for many of us by Monday. Bye-bye.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight, and it's time to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. OK, we'll start with the Metro. Sexsomnia. I believe I was raped in my sleep by so-called experts said I had, yes, sexsomnia. All right, I'll just go into this. A woman has won a £35,000 payout after her rape case was ditched over dubious claims that she had sexsomnia. So essentially, she claimed that she was raped. Apparently, doctors tried to claim she had sex in her sleep. So, right, well, there we go. The Independent. British tanks drive back Putin's forces inside Russia. Now, I'll be honest with you, this to me does sound quite worrying on a couple of levels. The Challenger 2 vehicles supplied by Kyiv play a role in an audacious incursion into Russia. Obviously, I think, you know, in the round, good, but I'm just wondering, would Putin think, well, these are British tanks? Anyway, we can maybe get round to that. The Daily Mail. So much for an economic crisis. Gangbusters UK economy now the fastest growing in the G7. An expansion of 1.3% since the start of the year. We've even outpaced the US. But the Chancellor still suggests that she'll have to raise taxes. Let's go to the Daily Express. Surely no need for tax hikes with our growing economy. So they've gone on similar lines there. The Daily Telegraph. GPs next in line for the PM's cash handouts. Doctors demand an 11% funding rise after Starmer pays out to end the rail strikes. Let me go into a bit more detail on this because this is what we'll zone in on. So GPs are demanding an 11% funding rise. Family doctors across the country are taking part in industrial action after the BMA threatened to bring the NHS to a standstill to gain increased funding for their surgeries. Leaked letters reveal that the government has awarded them an above-inflation boost of 7.4%, which the union has said is insufficient. They want a 10.7% hike in 1 year, saying this would bring a real terms income back to where they were in 2018 and 19. Harriet, I'll start with you on this. So Labour looks set to be dishing out, or should that be the taxpayer really, looks set to be dishing out for GPs now?
Well, this is what we were discussing earlier. I mean, Labour is doing the sort of typical Labour playbook from the 1970s, and they have given huge amounts of money to the rail engine drivers, and now they're moving on to GPs. And, you know, every sector of the state will be looking at this and thinking, well, we should be getting in on this. I mean, we'll have nurses, we'll have teachers, we'll have them all. And what happened before? You had inflation, you had the economy tanked, and it's just very sad indeed. This is going to happen all over again.
Julia, how concerned should we be about this now, really? Because the other aspect to it is GPs, not all of them, but a lot of them, seemed, you know, unbelievably happy about closing during the coronavirus crisis, very slow to get back to work. Loads of them, and I actually know this firsthand, loads of them decided to close early last week over this mythical threat of the far-right riots around the country that never actually happened, right? To any excuse, it seems. There'll be people say you should put doctors and receptionists in charge of the channel because they'd never let anyone in.
It's very true.
I mean, and now we're looking to 11% funding rise for surgeries. Is this right?
There's a few things I say. I really didn't like the language that the BMA used, talking about bringing the NHS to a stop. That sounded unbelievably aggressive. Bearing in mind, this is a patient's, the NHS service, not the government. The second piece to be said, I returned to my theme early on. The junior doctors never wanted 35%. They pitched it there for political reasons and for negotiation reasons, and they've got this large payout. And I said then, if you give them that, right, everybody else will come for it. And let's be very clear, if you're a union leader, that is your job. You sat there and saw that resolution, so you've come for this resolution. And the only thing I want to say, I want to pay everybody as much as they should be, but let's be clear, it's people who often earn significantly less and definitely don't have the same kind of pension who are going to have to foot this bill. The last thing to say as well, one of the headlines talked about our economy growing, right? The reason our economy is growing is because of the work that a previous government put in. And it doesn't matter how much it grows because Labour are spending more than we're bringing in.
Why did he call the election when he did?
Exactly.
Well, exactly.
Can I just say, this is actually... I will come to you, Matthew, but I'm going to short as a Tory here. I mean, you look at stuff like this with the economy, why the flipping heck did Rishi Sunak call the election when he did?
Do you know the worst thing he did with the election? He surprised all of us in the Tory party. Like, what's going on? Look, he'll go to his grave with that piece of information. But the point...
Or Malibu first.
Via Malibu.
The economy is growing because of the work the previous government did. This government are now about to squander it.
All right, Matthew, I worry that the message that, especially the GPs thing sends out, actually, is that if you hold public health to ransom, if you hold people's health to ransom, you get a payout.
Well, I think there's a particular issue with the GPs, which is that the public's disquiet about the GP part of the health service is probably the greatest of all its concerns about the health service. I mean, a cynic might suggest they're saying capping the number of appointments. I thought they did that anyway. I mean, you know, my GP practice doesn't have a thing as an appointment now. It was all telephone triage way before COVID. So, you know, good luck if you ever actually physically see a doctor. So I think what we need is wholesale reform of GP's practice. One of the mistakes, and I admit to a mistake that the last Labour government made was when John Reid, who was Health Secretary, to keep the GPs happy, got them to sign a contract, which is when they stopped doing all out-of-hours work, and which he stuffed their mouths with gold. And that is, you speak to John, he would regret that. And that was one of the government's mistakes, because they didn't get enough back in return for the deal. So a new settlement, not just a big cheque.
Well, let's just keep it health, really, because the World Health Organization, remember them, has declared a global health emergency after almost 15,000 cases of Mpox, which is formerly known as monkeypox, were diagnosed in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with more than 500 deaths recorded so far. And despite the UK Health Security Agency confirming today that there are currently no known cases in this country, well, apparently Sweden tonight has just reported its first case of the more dangerous and contagious Mpox strain. Now, well, I mean, should we be worried about this? I mean, because, look, from where I'm sitting, you know, we've got the World Health Organization, which I think at times has been an absolute joke and a bit of a disgrace, actually. People are a bit sick of these kind of global health warnings and the fear that comes with it. But, I mean, I don't know, it's in Sweden now.
Well, there's two things to be said. Firstly, I wanted our authorities to say anybody coming from that said country will be screened. Anybody who's been anywhere near that country will be screened. That's what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear it's a very low risk.
Yeah.
And the second thing, the World Health Organization need to be very careful about issuing these reports, because if they're not real, these alerts, then we'll start to ignore them. So they need to give us what the parameters are and stick to them.
Well, the other problem is that we've got Labour in charge, and Labour last time called for longer and harder lockdowns. So I'm worried they're going to any excuse to put us all in lockdown for.
Well, so we've had two interesting ones there. Whether if this does erupt, I mean, that's looking obviously, a bit into the future. Hopefully it doesn't. But if it did erupt, would we all go into lockdown? I think the more immediate thing, Matthew, might be kind of what Sean raised there, which is, should we be now just shutting the borders to?
Well, I think health screening is a perfect thing. I mean, there was actually a bit of a previous Mpox scare because there were cases were found in the gay community about 18 months, 2 years ago, and there was a vaccine programme, so I'm vaccinated.
Oh, really?
But the vaccine programme, Teresa Coffey was the health secretary, and she stopped the vaccine programme because the number of cases, it basically turned out to be a bit of a, there were only a limited number of cases, not as many as they expected. It's the smallpox vaccine, basically. It's not very nice because they can't just do it. They have to do it into the underlayer of the muscle. So it's like the BCG, if people remember that from school. Yeah. So it's a bit more painful than a normal shot. But it's a very cheap and readily available and long-tested vaccine.
Right.
It probably won't result in lockdown.
We're all right, hopefully. Well, there we go. Right, whizzing ourselves on. This is the moment that a cyclist in West Bromwich took matters into his own hands, and he fought off a gang of motorcyclists who were allegedly attempting to steal his e-bike. So, I mean, look at him go there. So they've allegedly been trying to nick his bike. It appears they've certainly pushed him off. He's got his spray out, I think. I mean, who carries that, by the way? What does that say about...
That's the rule.
I'm not sure that's legal.
There we go.
Well, I want that spray. Where is
Apparently,
that spray?
Apparently it's called criminal self-defence spray.
Yeah.
Oh.
OK.
So, there we go. But, yes, well, there you go. I thought there was some astonishing footage there. 4 men have been arrested, so that's all we can say about that. But, yes, it was filmed by Rafał Kalinowski, who, yes, again, did confirm that spray is called criminal self-defence spray. So I might get myself a bit of that, actually.
Yeah.
There we go.
Just keep us in line.
Also, just before we move on, I would like to make one thing quite clear, because we spoke quite a bit about Chris Packham earlier on. We did reach out to Chris Packham for comment, and we are yet to hear back. Anyway, coming up, what's going on here? Right, well, I will show you next, right after we deliver the rest of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But spoiler alert, that wasn't good news you just saw on your screen there. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, in the UK, King Charles called for, quote, community spirit and compassion following the disorder we've seen on the streets in recent weeks. The King's also thanked the police for their efforts to restore peace, as well as the communities who came out to counter the violence. Joining me now is royal and showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield. What do you make, first of all, of King Charles and sort of intervening, I guess, on the riots? He's got a bit of stick this side of the pond, because people are saying, well, look, it's OK for you living in your palaces with all your money coming out your ears. You're out of touch, really, with the working class and the concerns of people in this country about, issues such as migration.
Yeah, I think in today's polarizing society in both of our countries, being a good leader while trying to avoid politics can feel like navigating a minefield. The king is being very careful and strategic in his reaction. He's emphasizing shared goals, focusing on the common objectives and mission of the community. He's trying to align everyone around a shared vision that transcends individual differences, and encouraging transparency and open dialogue by allowing everyone to voice their opinions and concerns in a legal and productive way that doesn't jeopardize anyone's safety. And I think you can create a culture of trust where people feel heard and valued. Aside from his family's multiple cancer scares, this is the most difficult period he's had as king, and he is fully aware that the way he responds to this unrest could define him in the history books. But he's in this bizarre position in the sense that his power is limited limited. In America, we consider the royal family these beautiful, glamorous mascots. You know, they really, truly are so limited in what they're capable of doing over there. So I imagine that there are some concerns in the background, but he's not really in a position to voice them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
All right, welcome back. I've got some more front pages for you, so let's do it. Right, The Guardian, two-tier system, record A-level results highlight regional divides. They say that the South East was well ahead as top grades in top grades with the A-levels. So there we go. So apparently that's a regional divide for us there. Let's go to The Times. Ministers are favouring the unions over pensioners, apparently. So train drivers' pay deal to cost more than £100 million. We have spoken quite a bit about this already tonight. Obviously, pensioners are the ones that are going to be hit with that winter fuel allowance. So they're trying to equate the two things there. They've also got 1 in 10 A-level marks are top grade. It's a record outside COVID. And they've got some nice pictures there of Harry and Meghan on what is quite a weird trip to Colombia. Let's go to the Daily Mirror. Ketamine Queen held. Now, this is an interesting story in a morbid sense. Matthew Perry, the Friends actor, 5 people have now been arrested over his death. And a woman who's been nicknamed the Ketamine Queen is among 5 people charged with supplying him ketamine, which is a drug. It's a horse tranquilizer, I believe, and also some kind of slight hallucinogenic, or however you would describe it. 2 medics, and the PA have also been arrested. The allegations are that they, provided him, what appears to be quite an excessive cost, by the way, the drugs. And they've found messages between each other, including how much will this moron pay for the drugs. He sadly died, didn't he, not so long ago as a result of an overdose. So I think that's going to be a big story going forward. What I'm going to zone in on now with my wonderful panel is the A-levels, though, and about whether or not people should really go to university, whether they should bother. And we've got quite inflated grades in some cases, I would say. I do wonder, I'm not trying to shame anyone, did everyone here go to university?
Yes. I'm not ashamed of going.
Yeah, no, I don't want to shame anyone in case you didn't go.
Oh, excuse
or anyone
me.
Yeah, no, exactly. But what do you think now that it is still what it was? Is this kind of Tony Blair's vanity project that cost the taxpayer loads of money for student loans?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that what's come out, I mean, there was a lot of publicity about how much money you could earn from various sort of Mickey Mouse university degrees. And a lot of people have absorbed that there's actually, that degree is not going to do them any good. They're going to end up in a call centre. So, and it's much better to do some kind of apprenticeship scheme, and that's what a lot of kids now are choosing to do.
I think the real shame is the Labour government of the day boosted the value of university above technical training, above getting a trade, and that affected salaries in those worlds for a little while. But what you're seeing now, people with a proper trade, bricklayer, gas engineer, whatever, they are really starting to coin it in. A lot of university degrees are leading to just huge debts.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that it's all very well and good seeing people, we're getting great grades. Congratulations, by the way, if anyone happens to be watching this, or your relatives were, or your children, or your grandchildren, they got the grades they want. Well done. I will also just say, if you didn't get the grades that you want, that is by no means the end of your life. It's not. It will feel like it at the time. I remember when I was doing GCSEs and A-levels, I thought that this was the most important thing in my life, and it probably was at that moment in time. But you know what? I don't think anyone has ever checked my results for anything. ever.
The GCSE results, you never have to write them out again.
No, seriously, you just, crack on and keep putting one foot in front of the other. But on that note, anyway, Matthew, do you think that we oversell the idea of going to university?
I think certainly the 50% seems to me about right. I mean, clearly the idea that sort of was floating around that, kind of everybody would end up with a degree is just nonsense. And I think all parties have neglected technical education, frankly, not just over the last 20 years, but since the Second World War. After the Second World War, they're going to have special technical schools as well as grammar schools and secondary modern schools. That was the bit that fell by the wayside. And it probably was the wrong one, because if you look at countries like Germany or South Korea, where technical education is taken seriously, they benefit as a result.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to whiz us over to a story that caught my eye earlier, and I do think is pretty concerning, if not massively predictable. The Taliban stuck 2 fingers up at the Americans, and in a way us, really, as it celebrated the 3rd-year anniversary of retaking Afghanistan with a military parade. Yeah, lovely stuff. So we can see helicopters there in full working order. We've also got, oh yeah, there we are, a load of American military equipment.
I was going to say,
yeah.
where do they get that stuff
all
from?
American military.
Where do they get it
from? They fixed wing aircraft, then helicopters, thundered through the blue skies over Bagram Air Base, once the hub for the US forces, as well as American tanks and Humvees, all right? In all, some £5.5 billion worth of weapons, gear and ammunition were abandoned, and the Taliban have just lapped that up, OK?
Look at that.
Yeah, that is insane. What did anyone go and fight and die over there for? To see that? That is, I think, an absolute... It's almost like, you know, kind of spitting on the memory of...
It's a real...
It's shameful.
It's also a bit of a show of force. They look organised there, you know. They look like they've improved. My view of the Taliban was people running around in pyjamas. Not anymore. That's a very scary thought that they're that organised.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Like, that is now very much our problem. The whole point, wasn't it, of going into war there was to stop terrorism and stuff, and now we've actually just armed them to the flipping teeth. And shock horror, they still hate...
And as we can see in the crowd shots, they're not a single woman.
No, of course. No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, this should worry us, shouldn't it? I mean, one of the other stories on the front page is, you know, about Taylor Swift, Defiant Taylor, wowing Wembley, apparently, as we speak. Now, she had to cancel a couple of shows in Vienna over the threat of ISIS. Apparently, it's unbelievable security tonight at the Taylor Swift thing, as you would expect, right? But it's because of stuff like this, isn't it? Because
it's targeting women and girls. I mean, we've seen it over. We saw the Manchester Arena. We're seeing it with Taylor Swift. It's very chilling.
But that makes it... We are now less safe here as a result of what we've just seen.
I mean, it was shameful. I mean, and it was a stain on the legacy of the governments, which I think, you know, on both sides of the Atlantic, that just retreated and abandoned the people of Afghanistan. And as you say, the memory of all of those who gave their lives is just disgraceful.
It's a misunderstanding of people as well. Sometimes in the Western world, we have this thing about our reputation, and if we do it, they'll follow. These people are not going to abandon thousands of years of their own culture just because we said so. That was never going to happen, and you're seeing the results of this now. And I always want to say to any Western politician, think carefully what someone would have to get you to do to abandon your beliefs. Why do you think they're going to abandon theirs? We should approach that whole situation very differently.
It's very depressing that they thought that they were actually going to fight the Taliban, and they didn't, because they believed in the same things as the Taliban. Unlike Iranian men who actually do make a stand, many of them, for women and die. The Afghan men weren't willing to do that.
I mean, they weren't. We saw that they weren't. They rolled on through into Kabul, didn't they? And now there we are.
Hopefully we've learned a lesson from this. Unfortunately, with these geopolitical issues, I feel like they're going to come back. I hope as a Western world we deal with them very differently.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it is back. It is back. Wow. We've seen it now. You know, they've got the helicopters, they've got everything. Right, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. All right, is everybody ready? Harriet, who is your greatest Britain, please?
So, she is actually Antonina, the Ukrainian girl who lived with me, with her mother for a year. They had to flee their town, and they had to leave their home, their pets, everything, and get to the UK and start from scratch. And she has just today heard that she's got sort of top A-levels and is going to a really good university of her choice.
What fantastic. Well, that is great news. Well done, well done. Well, good for you as well. You know, housing someone for a bit as well.
It was a joy.
Good, good. Sean, who's your greatest Britain, please?
My greatest Britain is Rowan Atkinson for his empowering speech about the importance of freedom of speech. And he talked about the 3 pillars of existence that he really appreciated. And he said number 2 is freedom of speech. The only thing that beat it was food in your mouth.
All right.
But the point is, it's really shocking in a way, in a pleasant way, to see someone in his industry talk about why we need freedom of speech.
We've got a little clip of this, I think.
Underlying prejudices, injustices or resentments are not addressed by arresting people. They are addressed by the issues being aired, argued and dealt with, preferably outside the legal process.
Right, so it's Rowan Atkinson. Matthew, Greatest Britain, please.
Very swiftly, the people of Southport, as the town has put on its best face to the world as their fantastic flower festival, which they have every year, opens and shows the good of human nature.
To be honest, I genuinely really couldn't choose between the three of them, and I had to do it in the cold light of day outside a couple of hours ago. I did go for Rowan Atkinson free speech, but I think they all could have won, really, let's be honest. So, who's your Union Jackass, please?
So, Mick Whelan, for making out the train drivers on £70,000 a year are a deserving hardship case.
OK, well, OK, good start.
Mine's is Disney World. A man's wife suffered a severe allergic action to food and died in one of their restaurants, and they claimed that he can't take them to court or sue because he signed up to Disney Plus. Now, that shows us, let's be very careful what we agree to.
Apparently with that, there's a clause, am I right in saying, when you sign up to Disney Plus, which says you can't sue Disney for anything, and his wife died at Disney.
Yes, that's correct, that's correct. And it just made me think, what else have we all signed up for? And, of course, lawyers are saying this is ridiculous. Yeah. Let's hope so.
OK, all right, go on, Matthew.
And mine is Liz Truss. He showed the clip last night, but she's the joke that keeps on giving because the protesters have now been reported to the police. Sense of humour failure. If she'd smiled it off, she'd have gained kudos.
Oh, OK, all right. Well, today, the winner of the Union Jackass Award is actually Disney World, mainly because I just thought that was absolutely bonkers. So hopefully they see a bit of sense there. But, guys, thank you. I've really enjoyed tonight's show. It's been top draw, so thank you. Thank you to everybody who's watched, who's listened as well. Headliners are up next. They're going to be whizzing you through in more detail the newspapers, so make sure that you stay tuned for that and keep it GB News. Thank you to everybody, as ever, who helps to put this show together. I will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hey, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be sunny spells for many of us and just a few showers in the north. But before then, we do have some wet weather around at the moment. We do have a frontal system that's still making its way southeastwards, and this is going to bring quite a bit of cloud, quite a bit of rain across much of England and Wales through the end of the evening, pushing away towards the southeast as we go through the early hours of Friday morning. Could be some heavy bursts amongst it before it eventually clears away towards the southeast through tomorrow itself. Behind it, some clearer skies, and under the clearer skies, temperatures may drop a little bit lower than they have done through some recent nights, some places getting into mid-single figures. So first thing tomorrow morning, it is going to be a bit of a damp start across some parts of the far southeast, particularly towards Kent. Here we could have some outbreaks of rain for a time before that front clears away. Across the southwest of England, it's brighter, also across much of Wales and the Midlands, some decent sunshine early on, and a similar story further north for northern England, Northern Ireland and into Scotland. There will be some decent sunny spells here, but for western Scotland, quite a few showers already developing, and these showers are going to continue as we go through the day tomorrow. They're always going to be most frequent across western, northwestern parts of Scotland, and here we will also have some blustery winds pushing their way in, and those blustery winds are going to add to the slightly cooler feel to things across northern parts of the UK. Further towards the south-southeast, once the cloud and the rain clears away, it should feel pretty warm with temperatures in the mid-20s Celsius. Looking ahead to Saturday, and again we're going to see some showers across northern and western parts.
You really could become the next giveaway winner with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt just a lot nicer. We went out for dinner, just enter. And you never expect to win, but I did.
Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
With record temperatures expected this week, how do zoos keep their cooler creatures cold? Well, at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, the polar bears are enjoying a vegetable ice block.
Polar bears, they do have quite a variety of different temperatures that they naturally do find. Once they're moving off these polar ice caps, they are in the likes of down in the areas of Canada, Hudson Bay. Naturally, they were finding polar bears in 35-degree temperatures year upon year. So they are very much used to warm temperatures and heat waves as such. What you'll tend to find is they'll go for a good swim and then go for a snooze in the shade thereafter.
Not wanting to miss out, the sea lions are treated to a huge fish lolly.
In the hot weather, it's really important to give them ice because these guys, they don't drink salt water. These pools are actually saltwater pools. They actually drink fresh water. They've got 2 freshwater pools in their house, but again, being able to provide that in their outside enclosure is also really important. So offering them ice with their fish is not only enriching, but it's actually beneficial to their welfare as well.
Other animals like the lemurs will be basking in the sun, but also cooling down with frozen sweet potato.
So we've got 3 different species of lemur here. They come in all different shapes, colours, sizes, but they are native to Madagascar. Madagascar can get quite hot, understandably, so throughout the cold months here in Yorkshire, we do give them a nice heated house all year round, but especially making sure it's nice and warm in the winter for them. And it does mean that in the hot spells as well that we're able to keep our eyes on them and try and give them things that make them a bit more comfortable with that incoming hot weather as well.
The frozen food on offer here certainly has the seal of approval on what could be the hottest day of the year.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. US actor Matthew Perry's live-in assistant has pleaded guilty to conspiring to distribute ketamine connected to his death. 59-year-old Kenneth Iwamasa admitted to repeatedly injecting Perry with ketamine without medical training, including performing multiple injections on the 28th of October last year. Mr. Iwamasa was one of 5 people charged after the Friend star died from an accidental ketamine overdose. The 54-year-old was found unresponsive in the pool at his residence in Los Angeles. In other news, a 15-year-old boy from Sunderland has become the first person in England to be charged with the more serious offence of riot over recent unrest in the UK. That's according to the Crown Prosecution Service, in which